2023 was a big year for Commander, with over 400 new legendary creatures printed this year alone. That means there are a lot of options for new decks. And before you get absolutely locked in indecision about what decks to play or build as we start a new year, I want to share with you 5 decks that you should absolutely consider playing. And if you're concerned about how to play these decks or how costly it is to build a new deck, consider playing these online via a playtest tool. My sponsor, Moxfield, is not only the best deck building platform in the world, but their playtest feature allows you to play lists via spell table without buying a deck. It's really handy to help fine-tune a list or test something out before committing to buying it. Now, the number 5 deck is a counters deck. No, not a +1/+1 counters deck. No, not a counter spells deck. I mean an ability counters deck. Ability counters were introduced in Ikoria, as seen on cards like Indominus Rex, Call of the Death Dweller, and Splendor Mare. These are very useful utility that, believe it or not, help break the game pretty easily. They help give creatures combinations of abilities that just wreck interactions, like putting a Death Touch counter on a trampling creature, making it so that you only have to assign 1 damage to a blocker before you assign the remaining damage to a defending player. Or putting a First Strike counter on a Death Touch creature so you have the perfect blocker that can take down the biggest threats before they ever get a chance to deal damage to you. And these counters saw even more support when New Capenna came out, introducing shield counters into the mix for a limited indestructibility aspect that can now be given to any or all of your creatures. Agent's Toolkit remains one of my favorite examples of this, with ways to give creatures flying and Death Touch and shield counters. Toolkit is an apt name for it. With great utility backing these up like the Ozolith or Resourceful Defense, it means that losing something with counters on it means it isn't gone forever. It means that your investment in the board doesn't disappear like it would if you were giving your creatures these aspects with a single effect like Einok Bondkin. One piece of removal and you've lost the effect for your whole team. But the real reason you should be playing a counters deck this year is because we got some really interesting new additions to this archetype in Goldberry River Daughter, out of the Lord of the Rings set. Much like Resourceful Defense, Goldberry enables you to put counters on permanents, not just creatures, and that's where things get wacky. By moving a Death Touch counter onto a Pestilence, as long as you have a creature with Indestructible or Protection for Black, you can wipe the board for a single black mana every turn. By moving a Lifelink counter onto a Descent into Avernus, you can gain incredible amounts of life while your opponents take more and more damage every turn. You can move Hexproof or Indestructible counters onto high-risk pieces on your board like a Revel in Riches or Simic Ascendancy to prevent them from being removed before you have a chance to win with them. And the list I recommend you play, it has to be the Indominus Rex Alpha deck, another new legend from just this year. After playing this brew for a while, it's like role-playing a slasher movie villain. Indominus comes down with a ton of abilities, draws you a new hand of cards, and just can't be removed if you give him Hexproof and Indestructible. With Vigilance, Lifelink, Trample, Flying, you just become this unstoppable force that attacks every turn and generates a ton of advantage. Even if it's not your typical style, this is a deck that's great for experienced players and new players alike. Gets you used to how different abilities interact with each other while being a super safe deck that never feels like anything is ever wasted. With the advantage being that it'll only ever get better and better as new cards are printed with new abilities. This is a deck that's worth trying out at least once. Number 4 deck is a Boros deck. It's a meme at this point that the red-white color combination is one of the weakest color combos in Commander. But honestly, that's been completely dispelled over the last year plus. This year saw a ton of new utility printed into red and white, like white getting Mondrak Glory Dominus and O'Hare Talk, leaning hard into the token generation aspects of this color. Or even Elish Norn Mother of Machines, a white Panharmonicon effect that also staples a Torpor Orb into a single body. These 3 alone, while being legends, have helped give white more must-have effects in the 99 than ever. And while red hasn't received anything this year that set the world on fire, like red wants to do, the color hasn't been bad since they introduced treasures into the game. Red's been the mana acceleration color for a while, with Dockside Extortionist, Jeskai's Will, and Ragavan all shifting the perception of the color significantly. which is why I think it's still wild that so many players laugh at Boros. I don't think it's actually because of the quality of the cards or utility, but because so many of their commanders want to do something similar to each other. Wylith, Soul of Steel, Osgir the Reconstructor, Zabaz the Glimmerwasp, so many of Boros' commanders deal with artifacts and equipment. Believe it or not, that's a relatively new addition to design, and one that adds a dimension beyond what Boros used to be all about, and that was attacking. Aurelia the Warleader, Iroas God of Victory, Tajik Blade of the Legion. It's really no wonder that the majority of the top-played red and white legends were printed in the last 5 years, and that's because the color combo used to be so one-note. It was the combat combination. But now, vehicles with Dapala, tokens with Neali, or exiling cards with Contorius. The color combination gives us some real variety to work with, and we're only getting more and more. One of the most interesting decks I played from years past was the quote-unquote bad Audric Blood Cursed, but it ended up being really nuanced and interesting and a fascinating exercise in deck building. You want blink effects, artifact synergies, keyword soup creatures, all to make as much blood as possible, then take advantage of it with big Karnstructs or with artifacts entering the battlefield synergies. So it's not that Boros is a boring color combination, but it's gone from being a straight line to requiring thought to actually construct a deck in the colors. Take the deck I recommend you play this year, the War Doctor. From the Doctor Who set, the War Doctor focuses on getting time counters by exiling cards, and has fun interactions with the way Cascade works. See, Cascade actually exiles cards one by one, meaning for each revealed card you put a time counter on the War Doctor, making his on-attack trigger a potential one-shot right away. Fun, right? It's a deck that takes some specific deck building restrictions, some specific big payoff cards, and some real experience to get the hang of it. But it's definitely one that's worth playing to see it pop off a few times if you're a fan of big numbers. Deck number 3 is a colorless deck. A lot of people have tried colorless decks, and there's definitely a certain handicap to playing one. Decks that lack colors typically only run 2 to 3 non-permanent spells. You're really limited to Spatial Contortion, All is Dust, and Warping Whale, meaning your deck needs to play at sorcery speed, containing mostly artifacts, and is probably headed up by a legendary Eldrazi Titan like Ulamog, Kozilek, or Emrakul. Except that this year we got a bunch of new cards and effects that really help out the colorless decks, and is really worth a revisit of the archetype. For instance, we previously had Shimmermere and Vidalcan Orrery helping these decks play on other players' turns, to help dodge board wipes and other similar effects that may set a board state back significantly. But we got Liberator, Urza's Battlethopter, and the new Skittering Cicada that doubled the ways to play colorless spells at instant speed in just the last few months. In fact, the Commander Masters Precon, Eldrazi Unbound, added quite a bit to this deck archetype, like 2 new potential commanders in Zuladok Voidgorger and Omerthus Ghostfire Initiate. They deal with different aspects of the archetype, one with large mana value spells and the other with manifesting cards for continued advantage, but both certainly adding to the format. The Precon also gave us another colorless spell to play with in Rise of the Eldrazi, and this one is bonkers. A staggering 12 mana, it can't be countered, draws 4 cards, destroys a permanent, and gets you an extra turn. Talk about utility. And let's not forget Desecrate Reality, a 7 mana spell that exiles a permanent each opponent controls, and rewards you for spending colorless mana to cast it by returning an odd mana value spell from your graveyard to play. While both spells are big cost, they're both big benefit that this archetype lacked in targeted removal. But on top of that, great colorless cards like Roaming Throne help your Eldrazi triggers, like Annihilator, happen more often, while getting you fantastic utility from Enters the Battlefield effects. Do note, however, that Roaming Throne won't double your on-cast triggers from your Eldrazi, like Artisan of Kozilek, since the trigger has to be a creature, and cast triggers are creature spells you control, not creatures you control. But the deck I think you should really play is Graaz Unstoppable Juggernaut. This was a favorite deck of mine this year and put in some real work, while being a big eye-opener as to the effectiveness of high mana value commanders. Where I normally build around my commander being a strategic cornerstone, Graaz was more of a cast when winning commander, to turn all your little artifact dorks into juggernauts and just attack for the win. It also used awesome, seldomly seen cards like Lux Artillery that encouraged you to include colored mana producing effects in a colorless deck. A very fun way to use the rules to your advantage. Number 2 on the list is an Infect deck. Yes, Infect can be a bit of a boogeyman in this or any format because of its ability to turn the clock from 40 to 10 quick. But between the sets All Will Be One and March of the Machine, this archetype received so much utility that it needs to be looked at with fresh eyes. We even got an Infect-themed precon this year, Corrupting Influence, and a new poison counter-based mechanic in Toxic. Yes, this year was the year of being toxic. If one mechanic around poison counters wasn't enough, we got another this year in Corrupted, a keyword that provides additional benefit to permanents and spells if opponents have 3 or more poison counters. My favorite of the bunch being Glistening Sphere, a 3-mana rock that proliferates and taps for 3 mana if an opponent has 3 or more poison counters. The number of times I've untapped with this making 3 mana is staggering, especially when it happens on turn 3 or 4, rocketing you several turns ahead in mana production. While these mechanics were primarily focused in black, white, and green, those aren't the only colors where it's now viable to win with poison. In fact, Blue saw Proliferate return with a vengeance this year, adding in new cards like Ickermore Gauntlet, Tekuthal Inquiry Dominance, and Serum Snare to amp the utility up of not only Infect decks, but any deck revolving around counters like Super Friends decks, or ability counter-focused decks like we mentioned earlier. But Blue's biggest contribution to this archetype? The new Prologue to Phyresis, a simple common that, for 2 mana, gives each opponent a poison counter and draws you a card. This one immediately gets me thinking of how to copy it or cast it as many times as possible, and was even entertained in cEDH for a while too. Thanks, Quark. All these new goodies not only caused me to revisit my Finn the Fangbearer deck to give him a new set of teeth, ramping up the deck significantly with Infected Bite, Tyrannax Rex, and Bloated Contaminator, but also really got me thinking about some of the weaknesses of Infect in Commander. See, what typically happens is that an Infect deck focuses down one player, eliminates them, then becomes the other player's primary focus as you need to ramp those players up to 10 counters now too. Proliferate certainly helps make this a little bit easier, but how do you take every opponent out at once with Infect? And that's where my recommended deck comes into play. It's a Naya deck led by Rocco Cabaretti Caterer, but with a hidden commander of one of this year's nastiest new surprises, venerated Rotpriest. See, if you go wide enough, and with the Rotpriest out, you can use spells that target any number of creatures to trigger the Rotpriest over and over for each creature you control, giving out big bursts of Infect to whomever you choose. This one was a mind bender to build, but in practice, came up a bit of a clockwork machine. Build up some creatures, tutor Rotpriest, win. It's strong, and takes the rung by rung climb of Infect out of the archetype. If you've always liked the concept of Infect but disliked the gameplay, this one's a deck you have to try. And the number 1 deck you have got to play this year is a cEDH deck. I don't do a lot of cEDH content on the channel, but damn do I love the format. And it's really what helped me get as into Commander as I am. The interaction, the tense back and forth, and struggle for advantage, the politicking to keep the game from ending, it's all fascinating. And this past year has been amazing for cEDH and new cEDH cards too. Not only did we see some high-profile reprints of cards like Mana Crypt, Jeweled Lotus, and Demonic Tutor, but we also saw a lot of new role players and commanders introduced that have got players brewing sweet new decks and updating old ones. White decks are playing Skrelv and Dauntless Dismantler and Reprieve, while blue decks got Born Upon a Wind, Fairy Mastermind, and Tishana's Tidebinder. And black got ubiquitous Orcish Bowmasters, Sheoldred's Edict, and Beseech the Mirror. Red's new toys include Zoyoa's Justice and All Will Be One, and green got Delighted Halfling, Cankerbloom, and Legolas's quick reflexes. And we can't ignore the $3 million ring in the room, the One Ring, which has become so widely played in high-power games that every deck should start with 2 rings, Soul Ring and the One Ring. But individual cards aside, we got some amazing new commanders that have really opened up new brewing possibilities. Like Omnixilis Captive Kingpin, a really interesting high synergy deck that rewards you for actions your opponents take regularly. This is a format where players routinely pop fetches, or play pain lands, or tap a City of Brass. Each time they do, you get a bigger and bigger commander and card advantage. In fact, I had to dial back the build that I made because it was so effective, thanks to a 2-card infinite combo with Omnixilis and All Will Be One. If you can rush these 2 out, not hard thanks to Black's Tutors and Red's Mana Acceleration, then all you need is for an opponent to take exactly 1 damage, and you start a loop that pings each opponent down. And it's that card, All Will Be One, that came alongside my favorite cEDH commander of the year, Shalai and Hallar. This brew is about 2-card infinite combos that include several layered win cons all around getting counters on creatures. See, Shalai and Hallar combo with the same creatures that All Will Be One does, the Red Terror and War Elemental. These create a loop of dealing damage, getting counters, and dealing damage. And since your commander and combo pieces are creatures, it means that it's very hard to disrupt, with a lot of the format's interaction being pointed specifically at non-creature spells. We can also include the Heliod Suncrown Walking Ballista combo within, since that works with what we're doing, and fall back into creature-based stacks effects and aggro if all else fails. Having redundancy for all of your combo pieces is a big plus in this deck, and I've found it remarkably consistent while including just enough interaction to keep your opponents off of key combo pieces. It is absolutely worth dipping a toe into the competitive end of the format, and if you use an online playtesting tool like Moxfield, it takes the sting out of those big price tags. But if you are looking to pick up cards for new decks, be sure to check out my sponsor, Face to Face Games. They have the biggest selection of singles and sealed product with fast and easy international shipping. Use my code MECHANIC right now for 5% off your entire order. While you're here, be sure to check out these other videos. Hit that like button, and if you are inspired to build or play a deck today, you have to hit that subscribe button. And as always, folks, good luck and have fun.